We got Steve Coogan with us, and it's a very important thing because we only get to speak to you, Steve. I mean, it's every couple of years. I think it was Cock and Bull Story, wasn't it, last time you were on?
Probably, yeah, probably.
But now we have Night at the Museum 2, and it's not in 3D, and we're part of a 3D debate here. Do you like movies in 3D?
I suppose if it's... I think you can't concentrate. I think, yes, it's enjoyable, but it depends what kind of movie it is. For example, I wouldn't like to see a Woody Allen movie in 3D, for example. That wouldn't work for me. Yes.
Because there's Coraline in 3D. We've been discussing this quite a lot. I just have an interesting take on this from Jordan on this email. I'm just trying to think of a Night at the Museum 2 application for this email. Simon, I think I've stumbled across a better solution to 3D. On Friday night, I finally managed to see Let the Right One In. Have you seen that, Steve?
No.
Mark, your assessment of that movie, remind us?
It's the finest movie of the year, indeed of last year. It was the film that Sweden should have put forward as their entry for the Best Foreign Language Film Oscar, but they didn't, and more fool them.
Anyway, and Jordan says, midway through, I found myself getting slightly tense, and I realised that I was biting my lip, which resulted in bleeding, copious bleeding, for the remainder of the film. There is something strange about watching a vampire movie with a mouthful of your own blood, and it got me thinking about what else could I do on the cheap to further my movie-going experience? Eating raw meat during Dawn of the Dead, or live squid during Old Boy, or something like that. Anyway, I love the film, but my lip has been incredibly sore and swollen since then, so I can't recommend it without warning you that it does hurt. So I think we'll do this today. Stuff that you can do on the cheap during a movie which enhances your cinematic experience. For Night at the Museum 2, I'm just trying to think, Steve, what could people take in legally into this film which would enhance the movie pleasure from Night at the Museum 2? Go in costume?
I'm trying to think of all the things I'd like to say and all the things that Fox wouldn't like me to say.
Well, never mind, Fox. Just tell us what you'd like to say. You are Steve Coogan, after all.
Well, I don't know. If it's cold, you could always, pee your pants. I mean, that would warm you up a bit. And I suppose anything that made you feel a little warmer would enhance the movie-going experience. I can't think of anything that's apposite to Night at the Museum. You could really... you could take a dinosaur in with you. And then I'm trying to think of the name of a celebrity who's obviously sort of faded from memory to fit in with that joke, but I can't be bothered.
Okay, well, anyway, I think other people via email, thank you, Jordan, for that. If you've had a similar kind of cinematic experience, get in touch. We'll do that between now and 4 o'clock. Bring us up to date on the plot developments that we need for Night at the Museum 2, Steve.
It does tell you an awful lot about history. Obviously, there's an incredible American slant to it, which these days is sort of unavoidable. It deals with the sort of Air and Space Museum, just sort of moves things up a gear. There's a lot of special effects in it. And it's got photographs come to life. There's a sort of famous photograph of a D-Day in Times Square with a serviceman kissing sort of a random woman in the street, and that comes to life. So they sort of play around with a lot of iconic imagery and use it as a jumping off point for various things. And Amelia Earhart, the sort of played by
Amy Adams.
Amy Adams is sort of the new sort of addition to the cast, and there's some really good comic cameos. And I think it's a definite improvement on the first one. It's funny, and I get a chance to do stuff in it with Owen Wilson, which was great fun, And what else do you want to know?
Explain why you think it's better than the first one. Then
they're just better jokes, isn't it? That's all. I mean, there's a good cameo from what's his name? Is it Seth? Not Seth Rogen. What's the other one called? One of those new tubby. Jonah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Voices off from Japan.
There's some nice little cameos in there, and there's some good comic performances. So I think it's just it's better. It's better and slightly bigger, and I think people like the first one, they'll like the second one.
Yes, and you're reprising Octavius.
Yeah, and myself and Owen Wilson sort of developed this kind of double act, and fortunately Sean Levy allows us enough, gives us enough rope to hang ourselves or otherwise, so we're kind of able to embellish things within the sort of huge gargantuan behemoth that is a big Hollywood movie.
Yes,
you get a little chance to do some improv, and that's always good fun, and it sort of lifts what's on the page.
Because it's so CGI-tastic, it's difficult to know who's actually there with the other actors at a particular time, but it sounds as though the bit that you enjoyed the most is actually when you are actually acting together and making stuff up as you go along.
Yeah, well, Owen and I did actually we were physically in the same space together a lot, which is great because he's a lot of fun. He's smart and he's intelligent and he's funny, so he's good company. And you try and think on your feet, and it makes you it's easier to make more of an effort in trying to be inventive when you've got someone opposite you who sort of acts as a kind of reciprocates the sort of the input that you're making, whatever it is you're doing. So he's a good partner to work with. He's fun, he's smart,
And his cowboy character and your Roman character, they seem to like each other increasingly as the movie progresses.
Yeah, well, we kind of I don't know if we're supposed to say this, but obviously I think any literary critique of the movie may find some sort of deep
homoerotic theme,
sort of subtext to their relationship. But that's only my own opinion.
Right, we'll hear from Mark on this in just a moment. Let's play you a clip. Here's a little bit from Night at the Museum 2.
Good to see you, lad.
Yeah, you too, Teddy.
A little help over here.
Hey, fellas. How you doing?
Well, looky here. If it ain't Mr. Big in the britches himself, come back just in time to see us off.
We're gonna be okay here.
We? You hear that? You hear Daydream Johnny? There ain't been a we ever since you put us on the pay no mind list. And that's a cold place to be, boy.
Larry, what's done is done. Even the glory of Rome had to come to an end.
Would you please not look dramatically off into the middle distance when you say that? It makes me feel worse.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Where are you looking? Where are you looking? I'm over here.
That was very Ralph Richardson, I thought.
Yeah, it's just a voice number 23 that I drag out for these occasions.
Night at the Museum 2 is actually open yesterday. Mark, take it away, sir.
Well, I mean, I think it's terribly uneven, but I think, as Steve said, it basically, it's a great big Hollywood movie which has lots of cameos, and every individual bit of it is only as funny as the individual comedians on stage. I don't think with anyone, in their right mind would argue that it has much of a story. I think it is a collection of bits, and there are bits of it that I enjoyed more than other bits. I'm a huge fan of Steve's. I think Cock and Bull Story and 24 Hour Party People were absolutely wonderful films. And so, from my point of view, the way I'd enjoy the movie more is taking in a DVD of those two things and watching them for all the bits that Steve's not on screen. But it's sort of it is what it is. I mean, it is a sequel that's in my film critic mind is defined by the fact that the first movie took $571 million worldwide, so you kind of can't not do another one. But it is a collection of bits, and some of the bits are funnier than the other bits. I happen to find Steve funny, and
I violently agree.
Yeah, well, there we go. So, but I think, Steve, even as you were saying when you described it by saying, well, it is a big Hollywood movie. This is what you can do within the terms of that. And I think, honestly, anyone who's involved in those things knows that that's what they are. Nobody is going to argue that it's a great movie.
Well, it's sort of like it's what I do. It's like when I do big parts in small movies and small parts in big movies, and that's sort of what I've ended up doing. And you do something like that, and you kind of. I've just done another movie that based on these Percy Jackson things where I play the devil in. You kind of, and you as an actor, you have your little moment. And it's just something where you go and you have your moment. You either score in your moment or you don't. And to look at it in a sort of cynical fashion, you sort of thing where you go, where agents say, whatever movie you do, if you can be funny in your bit, it doesn't matter what the rest of the movie is like because you'll still have a career.
But are you hoping to do more? When I say the word acting, this is straight acting, as opposed to putting in a comedy turn, which is what the UK audience might expect, Steve.
Well, it depends what I'm doing. I mean, Cock and Bull Story and 24 Hour Party People wasn't me putting in a comic turn, although there were funny moments in it. It was just, that I trained as an actor. I get a little bit straight-jacketed in the UK. Fortunately, in the US, there are sort of more auteur type directors, like Jim Jarmusch and Sophia Coppola and. The only person in Britain who's patronised me in the nicest possible way in that regard is Michael Winterbottom. In the US, I tend to be seen as this sort of interesting character actor from Britain, whereas over here I am, for better or worse, mostly Alan Partridge. So that kind of is
that quite frustrating, really?
It's not. No, well, I mean, it's it's something which is it's a nice problem to have, because the alternative is not to have the kind of success that brings that problem at all. So I'm quite philosophical about it, and I do, I've enjoyed the success I've had with it. But it does mean that if I want to do more interesting work,
yes,
bizarrely, the kind of auteur type directors who are more inclined to offer me work are over there.
But if we take it as read that you're as funny as Ricky Gervais, you could be leading a Hollywood movie. I mean, is it difficult to take that next step?
No, I did do one. It's just that people, you have to have... I did a movie called Hamlet 2 that I was very pleased with, that didn't do the numbers. You do a movie like that. I did a movie in America. It got great hype at Sundance, was bought for a record amount by Fox Searchlight, Focus Features, yeah. And they and no one went to see it, so it doesn't... And it's all based on the if you're going to do a movie that's it's about what the numbers are. So I'm getting those things, and they sort of have their moment in the sun in the US, but they don't quite make it over here. So.
Mark has a particularly incisive question. I can just feel it coming.
Well, no, to follow up on that point, it is absolutely true that what happens is people make movies, and whether or not the movies get seen by a wide audience is often nothing to do with whether or not the movies are any good. I mean, you can be pretty much guaranteed that next week at the top of the box office in Britain is going to be Night at the Museum 2, and it's frankly not a very good film. And meanwhile, other stuff...
Well, hang on. Earlier on, you didn't say that. Your opinion's getting worse as we go through.
No, my opinion is my opinion is that it is a series of bits, and some of the bits are good. And
first of all, you said it is what it is. And now you're saying it's not a very good film.
No, what I said was, it is what it is, which is a sequel which exists because the first movie took so much money. Now, to follow up on what Steve was saying, the fact is there are other movies that are made that are far better that don't get seen. And it's very difficult for anybody, because if you're an actor rather than director, you're not actually in control. I mean, the best thing you can hope for is either that directors find in you the thing that is really good, or that you can find projects that bring out the best in you. I actually think that in terms of Steve's work with Michael Winterbottom, I referred before to Cock and Bull Story. One of the brilliant things about Cock and Bull Story is not only is it terrifically acted and actually an incredibly intelligent adaptation of a really complex book, but it addresses exactly the thing that Steve's talking about, which is his public perception and the perception of the character within the book, which come together. And that is a profoundly clever, postmodern, intelligent movie. But I guarantee you, for every one person that saw that, 100 will see Night at the Museum too.
It's funny when I do. It's bizarre that I have two audiences. I have the audience, a very mainstream audience that expects sort of more sort of obvious things from men, and this sort of slightly other intelligent audience, almost a schizophrenic audience. And when I do my live show, I made a couple of references to Michael Winterbottom. The audience who come to see my live show have no idea who Michael Winterbottom is, have no idea that I've done movies with him. I wouldn't know a Michael Winterbottom movie if they fell over it. But they want to hear kind of a vaudevillian type comedy, which is what I provide them in that live context. But I sort of and I used to make a joke about Michael Winterbottom in the show every night. It never got a laugh, but I refused to take it out. So I continue to do the joke just for my own self-satisfaction and for the one time that Michael Winterbottom attended the show.
Well, can you keep it in? Because the next time I'm in the show, I'll be the guy laughing at the back, OK?
Steve, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed.
Thanks.
Why were you giving me such a hard time about saying, that Night at the Museum 2 isn't such a great movie, but I like Steve Coogan? Because it was a...
Your opinion was getting worse the longer the conversation went on, and I felt if it had gone on 10 minutes longer, you'd have told us all that you hated it.
No. What I said right at the very beginning, and what I continue to say was, when I say it is what it is, and it is a film which exists because of the money that the original one took, and I have to say, I think Steve Coogan took it on the chin. I think he knows that that's the case, and I think, as he said himself, if his bit is funny, then it's all right. Then the rest of it doesn't kind of matter. But I can't lie to him. I can't suddenly tell him that I think it's a better movie than I do think it is, because I don't. You saw it, right?
Have you been drinking beer?
No. What did you think of it?
Just because it's five. What did I think? I thought it was exactly the same. I thought it. It was. I mean, it is exactly the same as the first one. But I think there are a couple of moments where he's right. The jokes are funny. I mean, that clip that we played.
With him?
With him in it, where Ben Stiller says, don't do that looking off.
Don't do the looking off, yeah.
Oh, that was funny. There are a couple of very funny bits in it.
But that bit is funny because it's Steve Coogan being funny, and that's actually a joke that Steve Coogan could have done in almost any movie. That's what I'm saying. So at any time, the movie is only as good as the person who's actually on screen.
We should have mentioned Hank Azaria, actually, who plays this evil Egyptian pharaoh wants to take over the world, but for all the world, his voice is somewhere. He's particularly famous in this country, I think, for doing loads of the voices on The Simpsons. But his voice is somewhere between Michael Palin and
Wadwick.
Yes, and Biggest Dickus.
Yeah,
So,
no, it absolutely is, and he is the person who steals the show, and of course he's not, in the original. And also, it's funny because Amy Adams, whose name Steve forgot, Amy Adams plays Amelia Earhart. And there's a funny thing when she says, "This is how I talk," and you go, "No, that's not how Amelia Earhart talks. You're doing Katharine Hepburn, doing Lady Cynthia Darrington in that 1930s film Christopher Strong." It was a very strange. It was either a very, very literate movie gag or a very strange reference to have made in the movie. But that's symptomatic of the film. Everyone's sort of been set free to do their own thing, and they do their own bit. And depending on how funny you find each individual person and element, that's how funny the movie is at that moment. But 5 minutes later, it'll be a completely different film, because in the end, it's totally incoherent.
Did it make you want to go out and buy a pair of jodhpurs for Mrs. Kermode?
No, not in the slightest. What it did make me want to do is to sit down with a bunch of people, making films in Hollywood and say, can you please, stop doing death of narrative cinema and stop doing a series of sketches and do something which is coherent. I mean, the other funny thing about it is as well, which is worth mentioning since we're on the subject now, I was going to review this later on, but since we've started, is that Ricky Gervais turns up very prominently on the poster. But, of course, as far as the movie's concerned, he turns up at the first 5 minutes of the movie and then he disappears, and he turns up at the last 5 minutes of the movie, because the story of the film is that at the beginning of the movie, it's the classic, sequel thing. We have to move it on somewhere. So Ben Stiller's now successful. He comes back. He finds the museum is being closed and everything is being put into storage in Washington. So there's the travelogue bit. And then Ricky Gervais turns up at the beginning, says, yes, it's going to Washington. Then they go to Washington. They do a bunch of stuff. They come back, and Ricky Gervais turns up and says, oh, you're back. And for that, he's on the poster. It's very peculiar.
That's because he's Ricky Gervais.
No, I know, but that, again, seemed to me to be symptomatic of the problem, that somebody who's very prominently displayed is really only there in order to be present. So it's that strange, it's like an old 70s movie. Look, we've got all the old cast back. We've got some new characters as well, but essentially we've got all the old cast back. It's like a variety show. It's not a film. It's like a variety show. So, I like the third act and I like the seventh act, but I could do without the juggling monkeys in the middle.
But you suspect that there might be a third one because this will be a successful follow-up.
Well, on the basis of the first one taking the staggering money that it did, and I mean, it was interesting when Steve said, "Look, it's better than the first one." And I thought I heard in his tone, and maybe it's just me being cynical, the same, the reaction that I had, which is that the first one really wasn't very funny at all, and so therefore this is funnier, in as much as there are more jokes in it, and there are more jokes that are funny, whereas with the first one, which just sort of felt terribly flat to me. But I never really understood the success of the first one.
Isn't that your job as film critic?
No, well, my job as film critic is to say, look, there are much better movies, and this you have to understand this. This film only exists because of the box office of the first film, and it is bitty in the extreme. And you're quite right. I mean, Hank Azaria does absolutely steal the show, and he is funny. I mean, oddly enough, Christopher Guest is in the movie, and I got to the end of the film going, where's Christopher Guest? And of course, it turns out he was Ivan the Terrible.
Yes, which you don't actually realise right to the end.
Well, you don't realise it. Plus, he's not really in it very much, but his name is promptly displayed at the beginning. So it's almost like the aim of the movie, the casting of the movie was the movie itself. Look, we've got everybody, and we've got Jonah Hill, who comes on for 5 minutes and does a 5-minute routine. Actually, funnily enough, I thought his routine was quite funny, and he's the guy that I'm not a big fan of because I don't like films like Superbad. But it's just bits, and in the end, that doesn't make a film. It makes a variety show.
And look out for the singing cherubs played by the Jonas Brothers, most excitingly for listeners of a certain age.
In 3D next week, we're going to be seeing and talking about the Jonas Brothers. What did that noise mean?
Oh, the Jonas Brothers, that's what it was for. Oh.
Do you really hate the Jonas Brothers?
Well, I don't really hate them because I quite like, the film, to use your phrase, it is what it is. It's in 3D. And then
it's the Jonas Brothers.
And then I spoke to them and I found it a life-shortening experience.
Okay.
We were offered a lot longer than I wanted to take, which is usually, it's the opposite of like Steve Coogan. If you had him for 15 minutes, it would have been interesting to speak to him for half an hour.